so many fan questions to answer. Gotta answer these fan questions. But first, I feel like I need some answers for myself. Looking for answers, I did what anyone would do. I did enough mescaline and ate enough hot wings to kill a circus animal, and then I set off on my vision quest. The Rams, lost in the desert. Such an obvious metaphor. But who would be their Charlton Heston, their Willem Dafoe? Who would lead the Rams out of that desert?
Don't look at me.
Answers. Must find answers. Who would it be? Who would it be?
Follow the mustache. Look to the mustache.
I don't know how the hell I got here, but I do feel like I have some answers now. Let's answer some fan questions. Our first fan question comes from Robert Buchanan, who asked, is outside linebacker a possibility in the first round? I don't see an outside linebacker in the sense of a weak side, strong side, 4-3 outside linebacker as a possibility in the first round, especially not with the 6th pick. Now, if the Rams trade down or trade up into the bottom of the first round, you have some possibilities there. Zach Brown's probably a guy that's considered one of the top 4-3 OLBs in the draft, but he's really not worth a first-round pick. I think that's a value position if you look at how teams have approached it in the draft previously, as well as with free agency. And again, this year you saw that linebackers were some of the last players to start getting plucked off the board in free agency this year. It's definitely a need that the Rams have to address, and I think it's probably something you'll see them take some chances on in the middle and later part of the draft. And we'll have a closer look at some of the players available there as the weeks go by here. Another OLB question. This one's from Maurice Blair. How will the Rams fill their need at outside linebacker? Well, they just signed Jolon Dunbar from the New Orleans Saints yesterday to a deal. He'll compete for playing time on the strong side. He's a special teams guy for sure. He's a little undersized maybe for the strong side at 226 pounds, but he's a guy that can contribute nonetheless. On the roster, they still have Brian Keel and Josh Hull. Now, Josh Hull has been a middle linebacker. He's been Laurinaitis' backup guy. Keel's played on the weak side some. Again, those guys are also special teamers. We'll see what kind of future those guys have under the new regime. I suspect outside linebacker is a need they're going to address, maybe a little more in free agency and definitely in the draft, looking for some players in those mid to later rounds. Francisco Prado, are the Rams keeping Jason Smith? Hey, that's a good question, Francisco. We're still waiting to hear on an answer. Now, as far as Smith's contract, it's a pretty hefty one, but they didn't have any situation where they had to pay him a bonus by March 1st, March 8th, sort of, most famously exemplified by Peyton Manning this year. So I suspect they'll keep him around and see where he's at in the off-season workouts this year, and when we'll find out whether or not that the earlier reports that they would either release him or make him take a pay cut are true or not. I suspect that's still probably an option the team will pursue. Smith has not done well in 3 years in the NFL, and he's had 3 concussions, which is a red flag in and of itself. And he's been given more than enough chances to try to make it, and he just hasn't lived up to his lofty draft status. All right, next question. Ooh, it's a good one. Jason, excuse me if I pronounce your last name wrong, but I feel it's my duty to pronounce your last, at least try to pronounce your last name. Jason Trocia? Is that okay? Did that work? What are the Rams doing for a punter? Good question. The Rams lost Donnie Jones to the Texans. Jones was quoted saying he actually kind of wanted to stay in St. Louis. He had a disappointing season last year. He has typically been one of the league's best punters. We had a report on the site yesterday, that's Monday, that they were looking at, they had a personal visit scheduled with San Diego State punter Brian Stahovich, who was a 2-time first-team All-Mountain West punter. He's probably a 7th-round pick, an undrafted free agent, and that's where I suspect the Rams and most teams will look for their punters, 7th round or amidst the undrafted players that come out this year. Finally, our last question, and it's a 2-parter from Garrett Martin. If the Rams do get Trent Richardson, could he and Steven Jackson both have 1,000-yard seasons? don't know. They could. I mean, anything's possible. I don't see that as a realistic possibility in 2012, especially with some issues still to answer on the offensive line. That said, I think the two together could be a very effective pairing for the Rams offense and give Sam Bradford some breathing room like we talked about yesterday. Kind of let him ease his way back into it, especially if the Rams don't get much help at receiver this year, beyond what they've already done with Steve Smith and anyone they may take in the draft. But I still think it could be a deadly effective pairing. You know, Richardson's a guy that can run between the tackles. He can run outside. He can break a run outside. He's got some speed. He's got evasive skills. He catches the pass really well. And, you know, one thing that's kind of unmentioned about Richardson in the scouting reports is he's a really good pass blocker. I mean, he blocks like a professional pass blocker that's been in the league 3 or 4 years already, which would be very helpful because the Rams could have certainly used that extra pass protection last year, and they'll be happy to have it again this year. Finally, Garrett asks a second question. How long do you think Fisher spends each morning molding his mustache to perfection? That's easy. No time at all. Mustaches are born to perfection with men like that, as we saw earlier in this little production we had. They don't have to work on them. They're born that way. Thanks for your questions, everybody. Be sure to get it. We'll do the mailbag again next week, so be sure to leave your questions for us on our Facebook page. Hit us up on Twitter, or you know where to find us on the web at turfshowtimes.com. We're the top Rams site out there, so be sure to stop on by and keep checking back. We're going to keep you covered with knowledge and information. This is Ryan, everybody. We'll see you next time.